Loosen up, have some fun, yeah!
Ken, you've been through tons of painful moments physically and mentally, I'm sure. But I want to know physically the most painful moments in WWE. Like painful, physically painful.
Physically painful? There's a lot of them.
Let's say 3 that stick out of your mind.
All right, let's go with the chair shot that I took to the face. How about that one?
Oh, good question. That was my question.
Yeah, hey, that was good too, because I was like,
give it to
come on, give it to me. And he did. It's like, I didn't mean it, but he gave it to me. Yeah, that's one of them. I probably have to say the other one was Mark Henry. We were outside the ring, and we were pressing each other, and I was getting ready to belly him on the outside of the ring. It was like everybody was running to the ring, and as I picked him up and I went to turn, my foot stuck in the mat. So as I'm picking him up in the midair, these guys 300 plus, I'm picking him up in midair and my foot sticks in the mat and I keep turning and my foot snapped. Crash! I was like, that's when I was in the cast, right? When they put the chair on there, they jumped on it and they broke my foot. Well, that didn't break it, Mark Henry did. I would say the next one would probably be a choke slam that I took from The Undertaker because my lung tore. When I hit the mat, I started coughing up blood. And I had what they call a tear, which is like a teardrop tear. And what happens is when you land like that, you land so hard, your lungs hit, and it hits so hard that your lung stretches and it tears, but it closes right back up again. So for almost 3 or 4 months, I didn't take it up there. I kept coming back, and I kept coughing up blood every time I took a bump. And when I went to the doctors, they said every time I took a bump, it was tearing more and a little bit more. And if I didn't stop, it was going to tear and I would drown in blood. So I said, okay, I'll stop. That ain't like a broken neck, right? You can't overcome blood in your lungs.
Ken, I've heard your story on the Stone Cold podcast about the first UFC and all the kind of sketchy backstage politics where they kept trying to stack odds against you. Can you tell everyone else that amazing story about the first UFC?
Absolutely, yeah. I went to Japan 3 days before the original UFC in Denver. They told me it was no holds barred. They told me anything goes. And I kept thinking in my head, no way, that's not, you know, this was back then when boxers had to wear gloves and like wrestlers couldn't belly to belly somebody over their head. Like, you know, the feet had to be below the waist. And so there was all these rules and stuff for trying to keep athletes safe, which in my opinion was bull. But now they're going to do this thing where you can kick a guy in the face when he's on the ground, you can hit him with elbows, you can headbutt him. I was like, that ain't happening. So I go to Japan, I fight, I defend my title, I knock Fouquet out with a knee, I jump on a plane, I take 2 Japanese guys with me to work my corner just in case this thing's going to happen. We fly into Denver, Colorado 3 days before the event, and it's a mile high, right? So, yeah, so I really didn't train for it, thinking that this ain't going to happen. I get there, they have a press conference. All these guys show up that are fighting, and I'm thinking to myself, this is funny. These guys, half those guys should have never fought. I mean, they should have been eating pizza or at Burger King somewhere, because they should not have been at those weigh-ins. Hoist Gracie's sitting there, and he's got pajamas on. And I'm like, how is that? I was like, I got one guy that's wearing pajamas, and the rest of them made too many Burger Kings. And I'm thinking, okay, there's 2 of them here. Those 3 guys might be something. So I'm thinking, I won't kill them. The fight is actually going to happen. I'm thinking, dude, this is great. It's like, I get to get in the ring and fight a guy. I don't got to worry about getting jumped, stabbed, or shot. And I was like, 1-on-1, I'm in. Let's go. Bare knuckle, anything goes. I was excited. We're in the locker room. The very first fight happens. It's Gerard Godot in a sumo. Gerard comes across the ring. He's outweighed by 250 pounds or something. He got this tall, skinny, toothpick kickboxer against this big sumo guy. And everybody's going, dude, I feel sorry for that kickboxer. He's going to get grated between the fence, man. If he leans on it, he's going to be grated cheese between the fence. Gerard goes sliding across the ring, all smooth as sumo guy comes. Oh, just boom, boom. really seal the deal and make everybody believe that this was no holds barred, he walked over there and he kicked the field goal. Pop! Superfoot Wallace, Kathy Long, and Jim Brown were the commentators. Before that happened, they were like, oh, we hit him with a left hook, he's down on the mat. Oh, the crowd was going nuts. The kick happened, boom. You can hear a pin drop. I mean, nobody has seen anything like this. This happened. Like, this ain't a movie. This is real. In the locker room, we had monitors. And all the guys were in there popping masks. Pow, pow, pow. Ah! And testosterone was flowing. And they were all getting ready. And in my mind, I'm still thinking, man, this ain't going to happen. And then I saw that. They saw that. And I remember, I don't want to say his name, but he had one glove. Because after that happened, boom, boom, bam, he goes, that's not what I signed up for. I was like, oh, yes, it is. I said, that's exactly what we signed up for. We just didn't realize that that's what it was going to actually be. You would not believe how excited I was. I've been fighting on the street for so long and getting arrested for it and paying the state for that stuff, and now I was actually going to make money doing it. I was like, dude, we're all the convicts, man. Come on down. Dude, we got a sport we can all excel at. So, the very first fight happens, and that is the reality. If it was me and Hoist that started that whole thing out, people would have booed. Of course they didn't boo, because I heel hooked Patrick Smith. Everybody booed. They threw beer at me as I was walking by. They thought it was fake. They never saw a submission before. Except for when Hoist armbarred a guy with one glove. That's another thing, too. This is how confused people were, right? You go to a bare knuckle fight and you wear a boxing glove. What?
And just one glove, too.
Yeah, he was confused. I said that. He wore one boxing glove. He couldn't figure out whether or not he wanted to hit him with a bare knuckle or a pillow. So this is when we really, everybody, even the fans, once they saw this on pay-per-view or whatever, however people got it, this was what really set the tone. Because if it was anybody else that went first, people would not have bought into it. But a football kick to the head, there's no acting on that. Especially when the announcer goes, oh my goodness, his teeth came flying in the front row. And then they had slow motion. This is how sick we are when we try to outlaw these kind of fights, right? We're all saying, hey, you can't do that, that's not good, that's too violent. But yet they do slow motion of the kick. And then they do slow motion of the teeth flying in the front row. And you're like, we don't like this. Let's slow it down so we can see it better. That set the tone. That was it right there. That's what got MMA, no holds barred, going to where it is today. Not being a Hoist, although we followed it up with our fights and stuff like that and got it popular. But really, that fight right there, I believe, really set people's minds in the right direction on what it is that we were really doing. Because none of us believed it was going to happen either.
Am I not talking louder?
Yeah,
No, you're not.
Sorry, I'm not.
Yeah.
Just from what you were saying right there, what do you think about the mixing of boxing and the MMA right now? Like Conor McGregor fought Mayweather. What do you think about stuff like that?
I love it. I love it. Yeah, because here's it's like
if a boxer gets into your world.
Yeah, oh listen, I love anybody that crosses over. I think it's exciting for the fans to be able to see what somebody from because that's what MMA and No Holds Barred was about in the first place. It was about everybody's style against one another.
But the McGregor thing with that, I don't know.
I loved it. I loved it because for me, I loved it because I want to be able. What's that?
Who are you rooting for?
Oh man, come on now. Oh, come on now. Listen, this is how it goes. No, well, listen, trust me, listen to The reason why that I was not rooting for Conor McGregor was because Mayweather is the greatest boxer to ever, and it's not arguably, his record proves it. Even though a lot of us, and myself, don't think there's a lot of guys he might not have beat early on that were probably better in the weight class, hit harder. But listen to this, you can't argue with his record. You've got to agree, hey, that's what it says. Now, if McGregor goes in there, and listen, he's an average boxer when he boxes, average. So he went in against a guy like Mayweather. And Mayweather, if you watch Mayweather in his other fights, he moves. Like he doesn't stand in front of a guy. He's always moving and hitting. The guy hits, he slips, and he punches. This one here, he stood in front of McGregor, right in the pocket, and allowed him to be able to take some shots. So that made the fight exciting. I love the idea. But I want to see Mayweather now do the same. I want to see him come in and do the same thing.
He'll never do it. He'll never do it.
I think that's what was going to happen behind Conor McGregor.
That would be really That would be crazy. But
I think Mayweather would have done it, except for I think when McGregor went Hulk on everybody, he messed it up. He messed up. Yeah, he messed up, and I would have loved to see that too. But where I stand on people, just like with your boy. Yeah, what's on the back of your shirt? It's Punk, right? Okay. A lot of people bag on CM Punk because he crossed over. I always say, man, that's balls. For a guy to go in and cross over, already set in pro wrestling, and he goes, I want to go try this, even though I may get beat, or more possibly get beat, and he jumps and does it and takes a challenge.
Agreed.
I don't know how fans don't support him more.
Yeah, agreed. John!
Hi, Ken, thanks for taking the questions. It's awesome that you're here. It's a true honor. My question is a bit about that, about your transition from MMA to wrestling. Was it smooth? How did you feel about it? I mean, was it a smooth transition? Was it something that you were actually interested in getting into at one point from MMA?
Yeah, when I got, and the reason why I went over to pro wrestling was because Bob Meyer was, SEG was, they owned the company at the time. And a lot of you guys that followed No Holds Barred MMA at that time, every time we went somewhere, we were always in court because they were always changing the legal status of what we were doing. We would get a license to do it, then they would come in, and some legal people would come together and block it, and then you have to go back to court and get it lifted. And then at sometimes, when we had to go from Charlotte, we had to go from Charlotte to Dothan, Alabama overnight, set the ring up and fight the next day because they banned it after they already got it legal to do it. So they were always fighting something. So it was tough to make money because all the money was going into the legal battles. So when it came time to up for my contract, the one thing I always said was that I'm going to do what I love doing as long as I can support my family. If I can't support my family, then that's got to be second. I have to support my family. And so it got to a point when I said, hey, you know, let's sit down, let's renegotiate the contract. Bob said, hey, we just can't do it. Since we are spending all our money trying to keep this thing alive. And I understood that. But I had to tell him, hey, I got to go do something else. Because with what I have right now, I can't pay my bills with what you guys are paying me. And I said, so I have to go do something else. And you know, it was good. So that's when I started searching around with pro wrestling. I went to pro wrestling. I went to Bret Hart. I trained with the Harts in Calgary for a while to prepare for my first match in the WWF. And I remember Bret told me this. He goes, listen, be yourself. He said, don't go in there and try to be anybody else. So my transition, I had a lot of help from Bret, being able to help me understand what it is I was doing when I went in there. Don't change who I am. I'm the world's most dangerous man. Why would you not want to be that? So when I went in there, basically all I did was, because when you spar for MMA, you're punching, but you're not turning it over. You're not trying to knock people out, but you're still hitting them. But you're not knocking them out. And when I did my submissions, I was rolling in and out of submissions. I'd catch and let it go and just keep going. So all I did was go, okay, I'm going to spar. I'm going to go in with these guys. I'm going to spar. So when I went in with Vader, we fought. Did you see that match?
Yeah.
We fought. He hit me with one of his arms one time that weighed as much as my body did. Boom! I just went down. I was like, okay, I feel comfortable now. It's like, oh, where am I at? Is this the UFC ring? I forgot where I was at for a moment. But I had loved the match. We went with him. Having the match with him really gave me some comfort because I got to go in and really be able to work on my craft. Not have to worry about whether or not I stiffed somebody and if they were going to be mad at me because, you know, Vader could take a beating. So we had a great match. We both thanked each other after that. But as I started going on, I still had to learn how not to break somebody's jaw or to really actually break someone's leg. There was a couple times in there when where I went against somebody I didn't like, and I was so tempted to just snap, crackle, and pop. But I didn't. I stayed professional. Can't do it.
First of all, thank you very much for your story. That was really
Thanks, man. I gotta go work at you too.
I'm a big Ken fan. I'm also a big Saku fan. So I have a question about your fight with Sakuraba back in Pride. You lost that fight.
Oh.
Ankle locker, ankle locker.
That's the official
See, that
result.
makes me real mad. I didn't lose.
Ankle lock.
So obviously, when it happened, you protested that stoppage fiercely, and you said you never got knocked down. After watching it again, and maybe you've answered this before, this was a long time ago, I haven't heard, so I'd like to know from you. After rewatching the fight, which I guess you have, what is your current stance on that fight? Are you at peace now with the result, or is it still something that you say you didn't go out and it was stopped too early? What's your current stance on that result, on that fight in South Japan?
Well, I don't know, have you guys any seen that fight?
Yeah. Jesus.
I've never seen you lose. Yeah. I've never seen you lose.
That's right. Here's my thought on that. When I went over to Japan to fight Sakuraba, I knew that the cards were stacked against me because I had already heard stories about how he's loaded his glove. You know, how, trying to beat him, you're going to make sure you have to be unanimous. They're not going to give you a decision. He's a superstar over there. So, and I agree with that. I think, you go in and fight, if it's close, he's going to get the win. I don't have a problem with that. My problem is when I fought him, his corner left water in there, by the corner there. So when we were fighting, and he did have gloves that were loaded, because when he hit me like right in the side of the arm, and he slipped up and kind of clipped my head, it was heavy. And that's why when you watch the fight, his hands are like this. He's not out like this. He was like out here.
Yeah.
So I'm moving around the ring, and he throws this punch, and I back up. And I'm right next to the rope, and my foot slips out, right outside the ring. I mean, it goes out underneath the ring. And at that time I do that, he runs up and tries to hit me. Wow. Right? And so when he does that, he kind of clips my shoulder. That's where I felt the gloves, and then I went down. The referee immediately steps in and stops the fight. And I jumped up. Immediately, if you saw the tape, I jumped up. What are you doing? Yeah. I was like, he didn't even hit me. And then I turned to his corner, because he was walking right by me, because I slipped right there at the corner. And I said, hey, check his gloves. Referee went right by me, pushed him in the corner, took him out, and they left.
Oh, yeah?
So, and I fought it, that's where I started. So I know what they do. I'm not going to throw it on the bus because I was a part of some of that. But I know how they work. And that's why when I went there, I wanted to make sure the gloves were even. Because mine were pillows. I had like pillows, they were this big. They had like big old heavy pillows. And his was hard. So for me, that fight has always been like a hoist one. Where it just seemed like, it's just, the cards were stacked against me. There was nothing I was going to do about it. So that's why I've never really said much or complained much about it, because it doesn't do any good. Even with Hoist when it first happened, nobody's ever heard me say anything until after my career.
Ask a quick follow-up?
Sure.
Okay. Have you had a chance to talk again with him after? Is there still bad blood?
I don't hate Sakuraba. He's just doing what they're doing.
Actually, that's a little disheartening to hear.
Yeah, I don't dislike Sakuraba. I think that he, obviously he's a part of it, but that's not his decision. He's not going to tell people, hey, don't say anything, but I'm going to do this. No, they're going over saying, hey, we're going to do all. And he's like, oh, okay, whatever. He's a company guy, so I don't dislike him. But I just didn't like the way that went down, and I called him out on it. In fact, I tried to get another fight just like I did with Hoist, and they won't do it.
Yeah.
That tells me everything.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet.
Who's Sakuraba anyways?
He's hey dude, you don't know Sakuraba, you don't know Japanese MMA.
You can't say that, brother.
That guy's a god over in Japan.
Sacrilege.
Yeah, you're going everywhere.
He beat Hoist, just in a match that was like, he came out and, because Hoist was complaining about the time limit, he wanted to keep going on forever, so Sakuraba said, well, what about bathroom breaks? And he said, well, just go in your pants. So Sakuraba came out to the fight with diapers on.
I'll Google it.
The longest MMA fight of all time.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Good.
Actually, fun back and forth question. I don't know if you remember in '94 we gave a Lions Den seminar in Montreal.
Yes.
It was actually, I was there. I just started.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, I was. It was actually here. This used to be a dojo.
This year?
This
Right here?
place
Right here. Yeah. Right here. Both gyms. Yeah. Hell yeah.
When I looked at Hoist Gracie, when I found Hoist Gracie, and I looked into his eyes, it was like I was looking at someone who was dead. He was so focused. It was like nothing there. So it's actually pretty cool that all these years later, here you are, still, still looking great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Same fucking building.
Manny. Yeah.
That's good, man. I didn't know that. Thank you.
Represent.
Real quick.
Manny.
MMA, pro wrestling, you were both. Overall, if somebody was to choose it for a career, which is harder on the body? Which takes more of a toll on your life? MMA or pro wrestling?
Well, I know for me personally, pro wrestling did. Just because in MMA I was good. So I could go in and beat a guy in 30 seconds or a minute and 45 seconds like I did with Dan Severn. But in pro wrestling, I had to go in for 15 minutes and let a guy hit me with chairs, slam me, come off the top rope with elbows. Everything for 15 minutes, 4 times a week, 360 days a year. So there was a whole lot of punishment that was going on in your body, along with travel time. So MMA for me, I think, as a career, I would choose that if it was about, punishment on the body.
Good answer. Good answer. Good question. Yeah. Well done, Manny.
All right, so you've been in a whole bunch of unorthodox matches. In the Lions Den. What I want to ask is, tell us a little bit about your experience.
Hey, you guys, listen up, man. Be respectful. These guys asking questions.
The shit out of you, yeah.
Basically, you've been in a bunch of unorthodox matches. Tell us a little bit about your experience working with the late, great Owen Hart and wrestling in the Hart Dungeon. I was just watching the match, and there's a part where he picks you up, your head goes through the roof. It's a pretty brutal match. Take us through it.
Can you imagine if when he did stick me through the roof, we hit a beam?
That's pretty close.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that wasn't even planned. He just decided to do it. That's one of Owen's ribs. Hey, let's see if there's a beam there. I was a beam finder. Owen was a classy guy. He was a good hand. I was really surprised that he didn't do more, because I thought that he had the ability, just like Brett, to be able to put people over, be able to have great matches, good psychology.
Hell yeah. And
he was even a better man outside the ring. So I really enjoyed working with him. I thought, it was a shame that he didn't hang around longer, because I think that, if given the chance, he would be in the Hall of Fame.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah.
One name will be hopefully.
Yeah.
And a quick follow-up question. You've taken lots of, brutal punishment in the octagon as well as in the ring. Do you have a finisher or maneuver that you did not look forward to taking, perhaps?
What was that again?
Choke slam.
I forgot what you
A
said.
finisher, a maneuver, which you were like,
No,
oh,
I'm kidding.
shit.
You said I took a lot of punishment.
Choke slam.
Yeah, listen, one thing about pro wrestling and also MMA, training, not so much pro wrestling because you do your training on the road. MMA, you do a lot of, most of the injuries happen in training, not necessarily in fights. Sometimes they do, but for me, most of it was in training. Pro wrestling was really tough because, like I said, 4 times a week, right? Think about 360 days a year, that's an average. Sometimes you're gone for 10 days or 2 weeks, right? So that's a whole lot of time that you're on the road and you're taking bumps. So the punishment that you take there is tremendous. Trying to figure out which one was worse, I can't remember. I won't remember. I can't remember. There was a lot of tough ones.
I have one last question. I don't want to hug the mic. We had the luxury to interview you last week on our podcast, Talkmania. Check it out.
Yeah!
But we talked about if you had one more match, you'd love to work another program with The Rock. There's some unfinished business there. An ankle lock match with Kurt Angle as well too. But you also threw in a really interesting name, Bill Goldberg.
Right.
Whoa!
Bill Goldberg, he likes to play that MMA role.
Yes.
He likes to look like, it's one of the gloves maybe, I don't know what it is.
He copied me.
Maybe.
Damn straight.
I kind of had to sit back and think after the interview, do you really think, well, he's got a reputation not being able to wrestle long matches. Do you think he could really hang in the ring with Ken Shamrock? Come on, guys.
Oh! Never!
Just as long as he doesn't spear me.
That's a good one.
I'm
That's a
fragile.
really good one.
I think that, especially with his style, and he's another one that hot wrestlers always say, damn, you stiff. I think me and him would have a good match because it doesn't matter to me, right? Because I spar, I fought, so I would rather have it real. I would rather have him hit me. I would rather us have a rough match. And I think he would want the same. I mean, he's just one of those type of guys where I think the rougher it is, the better it be. And I think for the fans, it will be an exciting match because
Kill him in a minute!
well, we'll drag it out a little bit. I just think it would be a fun match because he is really almost an image of what an MMA fighter would look like, right? Especially back in the day when you had the bald guy holding the world above his head, and then Bill comes out, and he's big just like that, and he's got a bald head and the attitude. So it would be a fun match. I think the language and the storyline that we could have before the match would make the match even better. Yes.
Thank you.
Do you actually think that WWE will ever bring you back or put you in the Hall of Fame or on
Yes!
the network?
Yes!
Cable for 3
Yes!
or
Woo!
why wouldn't you, right? Well, where's the status of that? Where are you at with, like, are you ever going to have anything with the WWE?
What are you guys saying?
Yes!
I've always said this. I've done interviews over and over again, always, because I know that somebody will hear it. I've always said, being in the WWF, or for you young bucks, I don't want to insult you young ones, I felt like there was a lot of unfinished business. I thought that me and The Rock missed our opportunity to go against one another for the heavyweight title. I thought Kurt Angle, we missed our opportunity for the ankle lock match. And I thought that Brock Lesnar and myself, being both MMA guys crossing over into pro wrestling and pro wrestling into MMA, I thought we had an opportunity to go out and see who was the best one who crossed over. So there's a lot of storylines there. And then, of course, Bill Goldberg, who really is an image of an MMA fighter. His character is brought from MMA. No holds barred, and I thought that was a great one that we could do. So for me, it's really just about being able to opportunity to do some business. I think that the fans would love it, and I know I would love it. So I know we're going to try to get it done. The fans really are the ones that control. They're the ones that can push it.
Yeah!
Has there been any talks about it, or what's the status?
No, there hasn't been any talks about it. Just hasn't been. And I've been doing this for almost, 2 years now, making sure that they hear me, that, hey, yeah, I'm available. Because they're bringing everybody else back. And it's like, hey, man, I could run circles around 90% of them in the ring, so...
Hall of Fame! Hall of Fame! Hall of Fame! Hall of Fame!
When you first left WWE, you went to TNA?
Was there any beef there? Is that why you left to go to TNA?
No, I don't know, but I can say possibly, and I'm not even sure if this is it, but possibly. There's a couple things I've talked about already, but I'll say this one. I think when Bret Hart got screwed over, when Shawn Michaels got the quick pin, when Hebner pinned him,
I was there.
I was too. Yeah. And I think that's why I'm not positive, but I stood on Bret's side. When Vince came into the locker room, I was with Bret. And I wasn't with Bret because I was against Vince. I wasn't with Bret because I was against the WWF. I was with Bret because he was upset. He just got screwed over. Had nothing to do with anybody else but just my support for him. Because he helped me in pro wrestling, helped me understand the psychology of it, gave me a lot of great tips for my career to be able to do what I did. So I was there for him, not to be there against anyone else.
Did you witness the punch?
Yeah, good one. Next. Next.
You got this. You're good.
All right, thanks, man.
Yeah, another question. I mean, you definitely look in better shape than most guys that are there right now, I have to say. So you definitely could make a comeback. Besides like Brock or maybe Kurt or something, Angle, who would you think would be the toughest and or most successful to decide to cross over, if you will, to the actual fighter?
Yeah, this is one thing that I've been asked before, and you know, we always look at pro wrestlers as pro wrestlers, right? And those of us that are on the other side of pro wrestling, like say, you know, people who fight in MMA, they don't like wrestling, they think it's fake. Most of the time, they always say these guys can't fight in MMA. They're wrong. These guys in pro wrestling are athletes. And if given the chance to train properly, get the right training, a lot of these guys can do very well, especially in the heavyweight division. I mean, there's some tough guys in pro wrestling, and that's one thing I think is missed through all the theatrical stuff that goes on in pro wrestling, is that these guys are athletes. They're very good athletes.
Just a quick follow-up. I remember there was a hint of an angle with Undertaker and Brock at the UFC event. Kind of looked at him and called him out sort of thing. Do you think Undertaker would have is he legit tough? Would he have done well?
Yeah. Undertaker could definitely have a chance because he could get a chair, he could bring in a hammer, he'd need a weapon. And he'll tell you that he's a fan of MMA, but he's a lot older now too. Like if he was younger, no question. There's no question. I think that he can handle himself. But like right now, he's been there. I mean, how many WrestleManias is it? 23 or something like that? 25. I mean, that's just. I don't think anybody's done that, have they? I mean, that's crazy. So,
WrestleMania 7.
Well, yeah, but check this out. You think about how many WrestleManias he's been at. Imagine if he was young, how tough he was. Right? So yeah, no question in my mind. If he put his mind to it, he did the training, he could do it. Yeah.
Mr. Shamrock, my name is Mike Lyons, and it's great. I'm very honored to talk to you at this moment.
No.
Montreal's a wrestling city, and I have a WrestleMania question for you.
Huh?
You are a special guest referee for the Bret Hart Stone Cold Steve Austin match, which.
Okay, give him some applause. He was looking for it. Give it to him.
You had
Which
Eddie's partner.
you were good job by the way, and when you belly to belly Bret, the heat was on Stone Cold. Bret was the babyface, and that match, the switch just happened just like that, thanks to you.
Thank you.
And I wanted to know your experience. What was your involved with the WWE from a UFC fighter to becoming a WWE wrestler? What was the transition from UFC to WWE with WrestleMania 13, by the way, right, in Chicago? And you were the special guest referee, and from there on, that's when Mike Lyons, got to know Ken Shamrocks at WrestleMania 13 when you were the special guest referee, and you became a full-time wrestler for the WWE, and I'm just humble talking to her now.
Well, thank you very much. I don't even have to answer anything. Thank you. But listen, I want to say something on that too, because in my opinion, at WrestleMania where me and Bret and Stone Cold put that match on, without a doubt, shadow of a doubt, that changed pro wrestling to the attitude there. And gave an opportunity for Vince to hold on to his company because they were getting killed by WCW because they had all their superstars. So yeah, that, in my opinion, that was the greatest match ever. And I'm not saying it because I was involved in it, but I am because I was in it and I saw it and it was a great match. I had up close, those guys were beating on each other. They literally kicked the tar out of one another, and I was proud to be a part of that. Okay, listen, we're going to do 2 more and then I'm going to close.
Yeah. Okay, one more. Listen, from one sex symbol to another.
You say sex symbol?
What was your best sexual experience on the road?
Best sexual experience on the road. Hey, can I, have you been drinking? Okay, have another one because my wife's sitting right
I've been told to ask that even though your wife is there. I know.
Oh yeah? Well, you go ask her that. Good luck.
I have one question.
I think she might just kick you in the balls.
That's what I'm waiting for.
And if she won't, then Brian will. Okay, one more, that's it. That's it? Yes, it did.
The last one. I have one more. I have one question.
Good.
Another quick one.
Okay, go ahead.
Your story with Saku earlier actually brought on something else. You know, we all know that Japanese MMA back in the early 2000s was really a lot of shady business. You talked about bloated gloves, and you talked about biased referees, a lot of locker room stuff like a brawl with Crazy Horse and Van Orle's team. Do you have an anecdote that is not well known that you would have for us? Just a good Japanese MMA story of something crazy happening, because those things can only happen in Japan, or could only happen in Japan back then. So
Yes, I
wonder
do actually.
if you do have a good story.
Yes, I do actually. I don't know if you guys remember the 16-man tournament where I captured the title. You remember that? It was called I Had something or another. Now, we were all going to this tournament, we qualified, we were all winning our fights. I won my fight, I was in the finals, and then it was going to be Suzuki and Yamada. Now, Suzuki, no, Minoru Suzuki. But, yeah, no, it's Japanese name. But, so, Suzuki was supposed to win that fight, right? Because in Japan, they always, their fights are weird. Right? They tell, hey, this guy's got more seniority than you, so, you know, he's going to win. Now, with the Americans, it was, you had to fight and win. So he goes in there, and it was kind of like Takada when he first left pro wrestling and went in and started this company. There was a pro wrestling match where a guy was supposed to go over on him, and he was on the ground. He might have walked over and kicked him in the head, knocked him out, and then walked out of the building. Well, Suzuki was supposed to fight me in the finals because he beat me twice before that. So I was supposed to face him in the finals. I didn't know this, right? Because I'm fighting all the way through trying to get there. And I get there, and then I find out that I'm told that, hey, be ready because you're going to fight Suzuki in the finals. And he hadn't fought his fight yet. And I said, oh, okay. So he goes in there, and I'm watching the monitor, and then all of a sudden Suzuki gets choked out or on knee bar or something. And I'm like, hey, what happened? It's like, you guys are saying I'm fighting Suzuki. And then all the Japanese in there were like, he screwed him. So then I had to fight Yamada after I was told by everybody else I was going to fight him. And so then I went in and had to fight Yamada, and I ended up beating him. But when I talked about, you know, the way that things are done over there, and the way that, you know, it's just like you just don't know what's real. And so I had to face a lot of that. And most of the time with the Americans are gaijin. Gaijin, when you went over there, they were trying to hurt you. And if you weren't a part of it, you were going to have all the odds stacked against you. So if you won over there, you did something.
didn't stop you from being the first king of contract.
Right? Well, yeah. Well, that's why they were trying to get Suzuki there, because they beat me twice before. I wasn't supposed to capture that title because I was supposed to have my name put on that trophy forever. My name was going to go on there forever if I won. And they didn't want an American name on there. That's why they say, well, Suzuki's going to fight you in the finals. It was like, well, I lost to him twice already. So then when he got beat, I was like, what happened? They weren't happy. Now, of course, my name did not get put on the trophy.
Can you compare working for the UFC versus working for Bellator, or working for WWE versus working for TNA? Like, how is it being in the big leagues being versus in that competition?
Yeah, for me, it was really about timing, right? Because I went from pro wrestling early on, working in small shows, over to Japan, fighting in Pancrase, getting big, and then the UFC jumped up, which was another level, and so I jumped over there and I fought there and became a champion, and then I went to a point to where, hey, you know, I can't do this and make money like I need to, so I need to do something else. So I jumped in pro wrestling, I became champion there and different things. So for me, it was really all timing, but all the timing was like whenever I was where I was at, that's where I wanted to be. So I was very lucky and very blessed to be able to have a career like I did and be able to be in places that I really wanted to be.
Beautifully blessed.
I have one question.
Yeah.
What do you think of Ronda Rousey?
I think she is a beast. I think she's going to be a superstar. Absolutely. Okay, that's it. I'm going to, hey, listen, I got one more story. One more story. It's my story. We got, no, sit down, have another drink. Hey, listen, this is my story. We got any Dan Severn fans in here?
Yeah.
Yes. You're a beast, right? This is my story.
You said Ronda Rousey's a beast, so you're calling him a girl?
Hey, you got to have one in each category, don't you? Dan Severn won the Ultimate. I was already, had won 2 super fights. So anybody that won the Ultimate was a tournament of all the winners in that year. They would fight in a tournament and then they would face me.
Yeah.
So Dan won it. We have a press conference. I walk into this room, it's got a table in it, it's got about 4 or 5 chairs, it's small. There's about 10 reporters in there. So I'm there and I'm waiting, Dan's late. He comes in about 10 minutes after. He walks in, he's got this lady named Phyllis, who is a wrestling manager too, I believe, or was a wrestler too. So Dan comes walking in and he's not even looking at me. He's like head down, he's walking by the table. And I'm kind of looking at him going, okay. I was like, if I was him, I'd be a little more excited about winning the Ultimate. Phyllis comes walking by. And so I kind of look up at her, I was going to say, hey, how you doing? And she looks at me, just bulldogs me, and I'm like, what'd I do to her? They walk over, they sit down. Dan puts his head down on the table. Phyllis sits down. And she, again, I'm sitting there, so I'm looking at Dan, and then I feel these eyes staring at me, so I look over at her, because he's not looking at me. So I look over at her, and she's bulldogging me. And I'm like, oh, am I fighting you or him? I hope him, because I don't want to fight you. So the questions come. Now, I think everybody knew what kind of fighter I was. I was a talker. I was always pushing the envelope. I was always creating controversy. I was always trying to get in somebody's head, trying to make them blow up. I'd even bump them or shove them. Just trying to get something out of them. So, questions start coming. I get 1 question, 2 questions, 3 questions, 10 questions. On the 11th question, Dan gets up and walks out. He's like, what are you doing? And he doesn't say a word, he just walks right out. And I kind of knew what it was, because I got all the questions. They didn't ask him 1 question. And Phyllis gets up, and she's walking by, the same thing, right? So, I was upset now. Dan was already out the door, so I had to tell somebody. So I looked at her and I said I was going to hurt him. Or I was just going to beat him, but now I'm going to hurt him. She looked at me and goes, oh, you just try, you go, I was like, oh, wow, okay. Hope I don't have to fight both of them. So the fight happens. Now Dan, I mean, dude, he destroyed the Ultimate. I was such a huge underdog. Everybody thought he was going to beat me. And I was thinking to myself, it's just me, I'm thinking to myself, how? Was he going to wrestle me to death? He ain't going to submit me. He can't punch. He can wrestle me and pin me, but he can't win by a pin. So I'm like, how is everybody thinking he's going to beat me? Oh, I get it. He's going to put his shirt in my face. I'm going to pass out. That's no joke either. You guys ever seen him in the corner? He's got sweaty armpits. His shirt's completely soaked with sweat. He takes it off and he wipes his face with it. I'm like, that's a tough man. Wow. So the fight starts. We circle. I know what he's going to do. He's going to shoot. Like, there's nothing confusing about his style. He's going to shoot on me. So he shoots on me. And I had a plan for him. When he shot in, I was going to catch his head. And I was going to put him in a guillotine. So he shoots in. I catch him. I choke him. Boom! I got this thing in. I got his chin. I don't have it all the way under, but I got him. I'm choking. And he's like, and he's throwing his arms up. He's trying to hit my body. And then he just kind of like, almost just torques like this. Like, whoo! And he gets out. And I was like, you know, especially somebody that good, right? You get an opportunity, you got to finish, you got to bring it home. And I was like, in my mind, I'm thinking, man, I had him. I was like, man, this is going to be a longer night now. It's like, there's no way he's going to do this again. There's no way he's going to shoot in and do that again. So I got to think of something else. It's like, how am I got to be able to stuff his shot, try to get on top of him, maybe catch a leg, or maybe ground and pound him, or probably try to hit him with a kick or something. So as I'm circling, I'm trying to feel him out, see what he's going to do now. He's got to have something else happening, right? He's going to do something else. Maybe he's going to tie up high with me and try to throw me. But I'm thinking all these things, and I'm like, okay, here he comes. And he shoots it again. Not only does he shoot again, but he shoots again and puts his head in my armpit. I mean, last time he shot, I had to go down and get him and start choking him. This time he shoots and he comes up, like puts his head right on my armpit, and I'm like,
Thank you.
okay, thank you. I was like, he did not just do that again. So I'm cranking it. I'm not going to let go this time. I mean, I got him. I slide my arm under his chin. I'm pressing it, and oh, I dream about this sometimes. Seriously. He's like, and I'm just, the whole time I hear him just grunting and trying to breathe, I squeeze it harder. And I look over at Phyllis, and she's all hitting him, get out, Dad, get out. I'm like, bulldog me now. So he keeps, his arms are flapping. You know, it gets down like, that's right, go to sleep, baby. There you go. There you go. All of a sudden, it's like pro wrestling all over again. Oh, his arm comes up. He's so shaking. I'm like, what's he doing? Is that pro wrestling? Then he balls his hand up. He turns a fist, and all of a sudden, I'm like, what's he going to do? Hit me in the stomach? Ain't going to work. He's hitting the side. Maybe try to hit me in the head. All of a sudden, he goes, boom! Wham! That's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt. Here it comes. Here it comes. Here it is not coming. They didn't didn't hurt. It hit me right in the nuts. But I didn't feel it. Hey, don't be thinking anything either, because I had a steel cup on. Cheater. He literally pulled up, last ditch effort, because he had nothing else to do, and he just wails me, and he just goes with everything he had, and he's like, clink! I heard it too, right? It's like, you hear this hollow sound with the cup, clink! And this is the part that made me feel even better. When he hit me in the cup, he goes, oh, clank, and he goes, oh! I was like, that's right, you broke your hand, didn't you? You broke your hand on my cup. He did. He hurt his hand when he hit me in the cup. Then I put him out. That was the last thing he remembered, was hit me in the balls. I had an assist for my cup. But listen, this is one of my favorite things to do. As you guys can tell, I have a lot of fun up here. I love hearing from you.
Yeah.
My fans have always been a big part of my career. I've always enjoyed, especially when I was in the ring fighting, I was in a bad situation, I hear screaming and yelling, and to me that always got me going. A lot of guys focus that out and get into their fight, and that's okay too. But I loved hearing the fans when I walked out to the ring, whether it was in MMA, no holds barred, or pro wrestling. It just gave me a sense of being important to you.
Yeah.
The reason why I do these things is because I get an opportunity to tell you thank you for your support over the years. I really appreciate you. I'm going to be over here for another 10 or 15 minutes before we go home. If you guys want pictures or autographs or any, we have some t-shirts too. Not too many left. If you guys want to get any of that, I'll be there about 15 minutes. But other than that, thank you so much for your support over the years. And God bless.
Hey guys, Montreal, thank you so much for coming out and supporting this legend. One more time for Piranha Bar, the staff, had us here, it was great, and keep it going for all the people that put this together, man. It was awesome. Matt, thank you so much love here. I appreciate it. Kevin's still at the merch table. If you didn't get a chance to meet him, then come up and check it out. Really appreciate you guys coming. We got Hacksaw Jim Duggan coming in October. If you guys are interested in Hacksaw, he's a great guy, he's a lot of fun. So thank you so much.